Good morning to all of you. Romain, Alexis is my name, head of the Centre National de la Musique, and it's a great pleasure and great honor for me to welcome you to open this working day devoted to the initiative One Voice for European Music, which, as you know, is the conclusion of more than 6 months of reflection and a joint effort of professionals in the field of music with the objective of thinking and bring forward the proposals to the attention of the European institutions regarding the support and assistance of professionals in the field of music. So this day, wouldn't have been able to organize without the mobilized exceptional mobilization of various partners. I'm going now to introduce, without the Grand Est region, we would like to thank for hosting this event. This initiative, One Voice for European Music, as you know, was initiated by the Centre National de la Musique with Jean-Philippe Thiellay as the president, who will take the floor later on this morning. And this initiative also was supported by the European Parliament from Ibán García del Blanco, who will also take the floor. And also the Commission also assisted us all along this process, and he will also take the floor with Tamas Szucs, who is the head of this commission, and who could not join us, but who will take the floor also remotely. So I think you received all the documents, but we're also available if you need any assistance or any help. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen of the European Parliament, European members of Parliament, and ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the world of music. So today I have the pleasure of speaking as the president of the young institution of the Centre National de la Musique, which is a public establishment, was created on the 1st of January 2020, gathering for the first time in France all the musical aesthetics and all the economic models, as well as the companies, associations, structures that keep the musical sector alive. And so such a common house had never been built before in our country, in France, and it is a unique case in Europe, which is very useful during the health crisis and during the musical crisis also. And the Ministry of Culture used our establishment as an operator also to try and avoid the catastrophe in the world of music, which was threatening and is still threatening, actually. And so it is a great pleasure and a great honor for me to open this first event, which comes from the One Voice for European Music, being organized within the framework of the French Presidency of the Union. And of course, I would like to thank the authorities, Mrs. Bachelot, Minister of Culture, and also Mr. Jean-Yves Le Drian, Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs, as well as all their teams who are here with us today. And thank you very much for their support in this context. So this event, One Voice for European Music, is of particular importance for the CNM, but also is very important for 3 main reasons, if I may say. So the first maybe might be surprising, but then it is the kind of it's because of its collegiate nature and through the consultation. And in the law, consultation and permanent consultation is very important. It is rather peculiar for such an entity, but at the CNN we like a consultation, we like to talk and share ideas, and it is thanks to a kind of joint effort that this working document for today was elaborated. It is the result of more than 30 years of cooperation with the people taking their time and energy in a context which is very difficult to try and find lines of consensus so that we would be able to orientate the various policies for the future years. And so you did it in a spirit of seeking the public good And I think this is very important to praise this initiative and this work within this European context. And this also comes from the previous work which have been done with Music Moves Europe, with the process which started in 2018 in Brussels. And here we are now, 4 years later, in Strasbourg, the other capital of European Union, to give new impetus to this collective movement. And so what is very important is this kind of joint effort and collective spirit shared. The second reason is European music. So at the CNM, we are very attached to Europe, and the link between Europe and music is being experienced on an everyday basis to try and help the French artists to try and go beyond the borders, and we assist the various groups to develop and set up their projects in the meanders of all the red tapes and administrations. And so we think of bringing more support in the European branch with the CNM Lab, which was created last year, and which has published the first contribution on moving music by the Horizon 2030. Now, why do we do this? Because we know what music owns to Europe and and vice versa also. But used to say that minimum diversity on maximum extension. And so talking about diversity in music is really relevant, because in our musical legacy, European musical legacy, disregarding language, if we think of fado, Portuguese, or metal from Finland, or the Italian music also, we can see this diversity, which can be an asset, but which also can be a hindrance. So the reality is that the common market in music, existed far beyond the Rome Treaty, far beyond, and a few centuries ago, composers, performers, castra, think of the castra in the 18th century, going from Naples to Vienna, from Paris to London, etc., were traveling, and then they go to even St. Petersburg. So we can see the dimension of Europe, which is rather extended, and then with journeys, very long journeys. But musical Europe was a reality, both cultural and economical also. And in many respects, we can say that live music was the first European cultural industry, our common industrial legacy. And today, we know that Europe accounts for 10,000 billion of euros and also hundreds of thousands of jobs. It is a reality, and I will come back to this later. So European music has to face various challenges and big challenges, and we will be able to meet if we are united. First of all, circulation of repertoires, work, and artists also within the European space. Music, excluding national repertoire, represents only 15% of streaming and radio play on average in the member states. And these are mostly dominated by Anglo-Saxon productions. But it is little. We know that international singers are completely ignored beyond the borders, and this is not normal. Well, literature and cinema has already managed to extend and go beyond borders. So we have to multiply the occasions for artists to cross the borders. We have to imagine support to do so, because they're kind of general interest, European interest to do so. And I remember going to Clermont-Ferrand at the Europavob Festival, which made this, it was a trademark, and this festival welcomed hundreds of European artists over the past 15 years. And so there were many festivals being organized, and the language barrier can be a difficulty sometimes. Electronic music, for example, managed to bypass, talking about the French touch, well known, but also music from repertoire or smart music, as we call them. Sometimes we may go beyond these difficulties. And also songs with various languages with Barbara Pravi, for example. It was ranked second during the song contest, and going to Lithuania, Malta, also Bajodake, also, or the both German rapper, and Live Europe, also bringing together concert halls in our continent, and all these, I mean, showed very good results. And so we have to go further. We have to help the artist and help them feel at ease, because being an artist is a job, and then it is a real legacy challenge also. In our conservatory, for example, in our music halls, in our archives, radio archives, we have treasures which not only should enrich the world culture, but also boost the creation of businesses. The second challenge comes from the COVID crisis, and you know, I mean, our concert halls have lost nearly 80% of their turnover over 2 years, so nearly 2 years which were very difficult to go through. And so the challenge to rebuild links with the audience and with the public who tend to buy tickets very late, or sometimes just stay at home, because I mean, we do not want a kind of impoverishment of this sector. And so the challenge is assistance. We have to assist and accompany all the artists, and the music doesn't have any dedicated musical program. And what the union managed to do in terms of audiovisual aspect for several years now, then we have to do it in music as well. So I hope that the authorities will hear this collective call. I do not underestimate the difficulty of this challenge, because in France, I mean, we need more, several years to build up our context, and we have to develop economical models, heterogeneity. I mean, the road is very long, but we have to progress, and the proposals submitted by One Voice Music are ambitious, but adapted to the needs and the capacity of the professionals. So we have to move on. So, and the last reason is linked to the historical context we are. So it's not casual to be here in Strasbourg. We remember this pandemic. Being here in Strasbourg when our neighbors in Ukraine, I mean, experienced tragic situations, really. And so music should be maybe a way to solve this crisis. I mean, it's kind of universal language. It is not significant, well, at a time when the cans are once again ringing, but everyone working at the development of culture are working against the war. And it was written in 1920. And so the Ukrainian hymn also, we can hear it all around the world. Artists in Italy, in France, there are groups supporting the country, and also Jamila, the song contest in 2016, won the contest. But so music is a kind of a common language, and it's a kind of peace driver. So in this context, I mean, we as European people have to fight in favor of diversity in creation, in freedom of creation, in a very competitive world, or say also in a wild music context. In the south, I mean, people have not been waiting for the Europeans, and the One Voice for Music shows axes which are connected to the expectations, to the abilities, and so the community institutions should share this ambition in order to first have necessary tools, prospective tools, because we can help and we can assist when we know what it's all about. And music has suffered of this ignorance. Second, I mean, we have to bring an answer to the very serious consequences regarding the Court of Justice from 2021, which is very a catastrophe for the fabric, the French fabric, regarding the decisions which have been made regarding the festivals, which were made impossible due to this decision made by the court. Festivals and many musical organizations. Now we have to find an answer to this cataclysm. And then next element, also we have to defend the European copyright, European model against the against any new initiatives which could go against the benefit of these artists. And so support European music, make it progress, support all the companies and support all the artists, also people working with them. And it is a noble task, and I think but it also, we feel compelled to do so because, I mean, hopefully, I mean, we'll be able to contribute, and it is in this spirit that we've been working for several years now. So again, thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you for your for being here, and long live music and long live Europe. Thank you.
Bonjour. Hello, thank you, Mr. President. Dear President, to be with you in this stage, it is outstanding, I have to say, stage. I'm going to speak about the Culture and Creative Friendship Group that we created at the European Parliament. Is with me my dear Alexis Georgoulis, that is another member of this interparliamentary group, to be frank. It is an honor, I'd say, as a member as the European Parliament, as a music lover too. At the beginning of this term, in 2019, a group of new elected members in the European Parliament decided to create this informal coalition of individual members to advocate for culture and creators. Today, this Culture and Creative Friendship Group is a consolidated group of very active MEPs across political groups and parliamentary committees that join our forces to be the voice of the culture sector in the European Parliament, building bridges between the culture and creative sectors and the EU institutions. I know that it was a tough time, the tough of the lockdown, of the pandemic consequences, as I know. This is the first of your presential addresses and meetings, and I think that it will be the resume of the normality for you as well. With regards specifically to this music sector, the European Parliament has always strongly stand beside the music sector, already as it is proposed to include Music Moves Europe as a preparatory action in the 2018-2019 budget to boost European music talent and diversity, it was said. Music Moves Europe has since developed further by the Commission, and today it stands as the EU support for music to develop a truly European music policy throughout funding, policy actions, dialogue, and through the inclusion of music for the first time in the cultural strand of the Creative Europe programme for 2021 to 2027. However, in 2019, nobody could imagine that we would be suffering a global pandemic by 2020 and its devastating effects. In the music sector, it has supposed the loss of income of 1.2 billion euros in 2020 alone. In 2020 alone, more than 66% of its revenues, following figures by Life DMA study. The Culture and Creative Friendship Group have been fighting since the pandemic started to defend culture and creators. Already in March 2020, shortly after COVID-19 had hit Europe, the CCFG started to EU-wide campaign Save EU Culture, demanding public support for the cultural and creative sectors from the European Commission and the EU member states. More than 300 cultural associations from across Europe, representing over 1 million members, and more than 100 MEPs signed the CCFG's open letter. More than 8,000 citizens signed a corresponding online petition. The aim was to help the recognition of the sector as one of those most affected by the lockdown measures, taking into account its specificities and the special working conditions of authors, performers, and cultural workers. At the same time, to include CCS as one of the 14 key ecosystems for Europe, as key driver for economy and jobs in the recovery plan of the EU, and to agree on specific measures to actively support them. The CCFG fought for at least 2% earmarking for culture in the recovery and resilience facility and each of the national recovery plans. This goal was included in the Parliament's resolution on the cultural recovery of Europe, adopted in September 2020, with the support of a very large majority of the members of the European Parliament. The CCFG has also sent several open letters to the Commission and the national governments and submitted many formal questions for written answers to the Commission, covering issues such as cultural recovery, the national implementations of the Copyright Directive, I know that is a tough stone, cultural spending in the MFF and RRF, or the negotiations of the Digital Service Act. I, together with the cultural and creative friendship groups, colleagues, am convinced that we need to push a forward policy priorities in the future, defending and supporting creators by including the sector concerns in the legislative initiatives that are under discussion today, particularly with regards to the challenges of digitalization. Digitalization has created opportunities as well as challenges at all levels of the music value chain, such as the repartition of revenue and fair remuneration in this new digital environment. Ensuring fair remuneration for authors and performers and tackling the issue of buyout contracts as key to secure a sustainable digital ecosystem for creative content. The implementation of the Copyright Directive to be done respecting fair remuneration conditions for creators. With regard to the DSA, the Digital Service Act, that we are discussing now in trilogues, it is expected to have such an agreement at the end of this very month. To be aware of the challenges posed by the online platforms that control the access to cultural and creative works, and of their responsibility faced to fundamental rights enshrined in the European Charter, including respect for cultural diversity and the protection of intellectual property rights. Finally, developing a truly digital illustration that involves, on one hand, to develop digital skills for creators, and in the other, to increase society awareness of the functioning of algorithms and data sets of AI, together with a broad public understanding on the importance of respecting intellectual property rights and the role that creators and musicians play in our society. So let the music goes on. I wish you plenty of success today. I look forward to know your inform that you present today. Congratulations for this, and thank you very much. We'll be at your hand whenever you need it. You know that we are a tough ally of you, of the music sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So in some moments we will be online with the Director of Culture, and after taking the floor, Corinne Sadki, who is responsible for the European redaction of the National Centre of Music, will take the floor to introduce the recommendations for One Voice for Music. Tamas Szucs, you have the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me well. First of all, let me thank the Centre National de la Musique for inviting Commissioner Maria Gabriel for this prestigious event. She deeply regrets that she cannot be here today, and she asked me to convey her best wishes to you and to intervene on her behalf. The One Voice for European music process can obviously play an essential role in strengthening one of the EU's actions to support music, the European Commission's Music Move Europe initiative. And I was very happy to hear that already there have been quite a few references to this initiative. The music sector is a very important part of our society and of our daily lives. As we are celebrating now the European Year of Youth, I want to stress the importance of music and music festivals for young people in particular. I would also like to recall, as some other speakers before me, that the COVID-19 crisis affected the music sector across the whole value chain. The music business has gone through a profound change, and it will continue to do so. The high-level Music Move Europe conference we organized in March last year highlighted the opportunities, but also the challenges linked to the online music world and the potential impact it may have on cultural diversity, also in the long term. We can already clearly see that music streaming has grown massively and will continue to do so in the coming years. To accelerate recovery and the transition to a more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive Europe, targeted public and private investment in these sectors are needed. It is also key that the music sector speaks with one voice. As you know well, the Commission's MME initiative is already providing targeting support to help the sector and to address challenges both through financial support and through our policy work. Between 2018 and 2020, we launched 7 calls for proposals in specific areas. 5 EU studies have also been commissioned to better understand the challenges of the sector in important fields such as music export or music data. Of course, music stakeholders and organizations also benefit from the Creative Europe program. During the last budgetary period alone, more than 120 projects received EU funding, as well as 9 music networks and 6 music platforms for a total of 98 million euro. Many of the participants here today or following us online may have actually already benefited from this, allowing to carry out activities across borders or to widen networks or to grow their businesses. In order to strengthen this support, we in the Commission decided to move to another gear for the new Creative Europe program between 2021 and 2027. And I'm very grateful for the European Parliament, among others, for their strong support for this attempt and also for the cooperation we have been experiencing in the last few years. What does it mean? First, a minimum of 10% of the budget of the cooperation projects that receive funding every year is earmarked now for the music sector. Second, the new program offers the possibility to launch sector-specific actions in the music sector. I do hope that we will be able to exploit this fully. Concretely, we are going to launch soon a 4-year action to enhance the dialogue with the music sector. The work you have already done with the One Voice initiative is an excellent basis and inspiration to put this into practice. Third, music projects continue to benefit under several other funding opportunities in this program, as well as from other EU programs. Of course, good policy making also requires solid data and evidence. This is why we are developing further our cooperation with the existing Observatory on Infringement of Intellectual Property Rights, most people call it just the EU IPO, that already does specific work on copyright-intensive industries such as music. Another important aspect of the Music Moves Europe initiative at EU level is our efforts to mainstream music in other policy areas and programs. Among others, a specific call on music is being launched in 2022 under the Horizon Europe research program. In order to succeed in all these efforts, of course, we need to work together. And with my team, we are very much looking forward to hear your recommendations and to discuss them further today with you. I think today's panel, where my colleague Barbara Gessler will participate, could be a great start to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in very strange times, so before concluding, I must recall that, of course, in all we do, plan, and discuss these days, the dark shadow of Russia's military aggression against Ukraine remains at the center of our attention. We must continue reiterating our full support for the Ukrainian people and use all possible means at member states as well as at EU level, including actions in culture, to help them in this terrible situation. Earlier this week, the Ministers for Culture met in the Council here in Brussels to coordinate their support to protect the cultural sector and its actors in Ukraine. Commissioner Gabriel announced a series of measures to provide support via the Creative Europe program and also by other means. And member states have also suggested a range of actions to help Ukraine. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a successful conference today.
Bonjour à toutes et tous.
Hello, everybody. Corinne Sadki, Counselor for Europe at the Ministry of Culture. I'm also president of the network music, and we have been working a lot on the topic of today. First of all, thank you, Vice President, the President of CNM, Mr. Ibán García of Blanco, and Mr. Tamas Szucs for your contributions and for your support of the initiative. We will enter a bit further into the topic about the genesis and the why, the reasons for this initiative. So it was for us a unique opportunity to remind the importance of music for Europe. And as we have to put back music into Europe and Europe into the music. Since the beginning, and I repeat what Philip said, we are in a process of consultation, and we launched debates around European topics about the problems of financing or recommendation. And within the groups of consultation, the idea of One Voice for Music was born and was forged. And we launched the working groups on 4 topics, specific topics. So there is so we have a real need for a debate on music also within the European Commission. We have been talking about the exchange in working groups, which led to the preparation action, and today we have this action inscribed in the European program. And this is really important. And also, I would like to insist on the fact that there is a real cooperation and a gathering of all professional organizations in Europe. We have been discussing a lot about the IMC with the Agenda for Culture and the DMA, Impala, all these European actors who have been participating in these works. There has been a general mobilization for music in the whole of Europe. However, the music professionals think that the results are still a bit low, and the initiative One Voice in Music is there to launch again a new dynamics around key topics to the benefit of all European actors. So now about methodology, as we wanted to be transparent in the debates, the CNM has invited organization of the sectors to the process by gathering several subsectors, but also different typologies and structures like large operas or small labels or independent actors. And all of them have been ready to find a consensus for the music sector in Europe. So the results were 4 topics, so the mobility of artists and their programs, observation and knowledge, innovation and ecological transition, as well as the challenges of rules and regulations. For each topic, we have been working with facilitators and experts in their topic. They are here, and I'd like to thank them: Marie Foll, Alice Fonja, Gwendoline Sharp, who is maybe not here, but we're thinking of her, Arte Legal, Laurent Didier, have been working a lot around those topics. And I would like to thank the CNM, because the knowledge is residing within CNM. We have been working with Séverine Morin, Marco Wassmann, Marcel Thibault, Céline Muguet, and about the topics of mobility, innovation, and ecological transition, and with Fabienne Niclet. So in those working groups, workshops, we have been analyzing all the challenges for the professions of music for 2 hours, and we have been reworking the material in order to find out the big lines of consensus. We have written the reports which have been sent to all participants and have been validated. So 2 contents have been the result: an exhaustive content, but also a document gathering, showing up the major challenges. We are really happy to have gathered more than 30 signatories, organizations who have signed the initiative, and we thank them for their time and the efforts. So I'd like to invite you to connect you by this code to the link, which will be present during the initiative, where you can see all the reports. And now, let's summarize the recommendations. So in general, the result of all the workshops is the importance of a better understanding of the challenges. Music is a strong economical factor in European Union. It's 7,000 active companies. So moreover, we have to remind that the pandemic really has affected the sector, the artists and professionals. So the demand of the professionals is to have a support at 2 levels. In the framework of European programs, transversal programs, but also the structural funds and the funds for innovation and research. Of course, also by a strong extension of the sector. In the present budget, there's a claim for an increase, a progressive increase of the budgets for, and in the future program, and in a model which is the same for the audio-video sector. So there's a claim for a dedicated program for music. So of course, So the whole sector has invested, has engaged in those preparation works with studies, export strategies and other topics. But these results of One Voice for Music are recommendations developed in that sense, in order to be a support for sectoral actions. So, this is the result. So, to give to the sector an appropriate support due to its importance. Mobility of artists and circulation of works. This topic shows the importance of the international dimension of music in the development of the careers of professionals and artists, and showing up the economical impact and the specificity of European music. So we need really a specific, tailor-made means to cover all the costs, and we need, and we note that our countries and our professional sectors in Europe are really largely spread. According to the recent studies. So we've been talking about already the Anglo-Saxon part of streamings, which is hindering the mobility of artists and works even within the Europe. So the idea is that Europe has to be a territory of development for all artists. And of course, the climate change pushes us to a green transition. And for this, investment is needed in order to rethink the functioning and the practices, in order to obtain profound change. So the recommendations concern a development of financing systems which are very ambitious and based on the model of financial encouragement. Today, this type of financing is already foreseen. It's a real added value to Europe, which is linked to the mobility of European art. Then a development of an ambitious catalogue of measures. How can we help Europeans to be more export-ready, as we say? So the European strategy has developed a toolbox to accompany professionals along the long way on the international level. So access to the resources, the increase, the approval of professional knowledge and mobility. So it's crucial to continue these strategies in order to have a significant impact on the sector and to obtain solidarity. Finally, the third measure is to improve the coordination between the member states in administrative and social questions in order to encourage a recovery and in order to facilitate the international mobility after COVID. So here it's a question about the double taxation and the coordination and the mobility of professional artists. So it's about informing about the possibilities. There are access points, contact points, which are efficient. So we have to multiply them. Then also we have a committee for professionals, European and international professionals. And finally, dedicate measures in order to facilitate the mobility and circulation of artists after COVID. All this in order to encourage or to incite a real collective dynamics in Europe by giving resources to the whole sector, to all artists, to have a resource center. As we often say within our network, so alone we go faster, but together we go further. So all these recommendations are really in line with the conclusions of the Council of Culture, insisting on the topics of export and mobility. So observation and knowledge. So the challenge of mobility is linked to observation and knowledge. So we have had a dense exchange on these topics. So it's about the access to data, and so there's a real need to have more tools to observe the sector, to have more knowledge, and so there is a large consensus about this. Two recommendations insist on the support and precise the need for building up of future tools for observation and for knowledge and access to them, and the need for common referentials. How can we define today a European song? By the language, by the nationality of the artist, by the nationality of the producer or the investor today. These data are still very vague, and we have to have have precise tools in order to observe well the sector. So there are a lot of research fields which you will find back in the global report. The important research fields are linked to the four pillars developed by the European Observatory for Music. So the social, economical, and the prospective pillar. So it's important to have an ambitious vehicle or medium in Europe. So innovation and then development. So these topics are often complementary, sometimes opposite. It's so these are the two topics which have a large effect on the transformation of the sector of music. So we have already many working groups and experimental projects which have been supported by the European Commissions. And the professionals are worried about the lack of means and the lack of tools. I would like to read a letter of demand or the conclusion of the participants of the group. So digital use is part of the sector of music. It's a real lever of increase in new forms of creations or broadcast. Digitalization gives us new opportunities for export and for cooperation on the European level. In a logic of in a responsible development, it's important to create new means, especially by including diversity, ecological transition, and the fight against climate change. They are, however, the principal factor of the increase of CO2 emissions. So it's necessary to identify well and to understand well the negative effects and impacts and not to contribute to inequalities. So for me it was important to read you this paragraph. So the density of exchange in the working group is reflected by the global report, which you can find on the internet site. We have condensed the two recommendations of promoting new models and mechanisms in order to encourage the sector of music to contribute to the fight against climate change, and in order to develop support measures which increase the capacities of the sector, and in order to become the digital champion of the future.
Les organisations.
Regarding regulatory subjects, I mean, we should highlight the need for a continuous dialogue on the various topics for professionals and European artists. And more specifically, of course, I mean, the implementation of the directive on copyrights and also vigilance on the impact of the new Digital Service Act regulations. Now, we already mentioned the consequences of the decisions by the Court of Justice with the decisions, and we praise the impact on this subject. Now, the professional would like to emphasize the exchanges regarding the buyout, the European status of the artist, and also the articulation between the competition right and collective negotiation, but also regarding VAT questions. Now, the professionals call for an impact studies regarding the various impacts and opportunities regarding extending the VAT rates on musical production, and we should ponder more on these questions. Now, these are all the recommendations which were submitted by One Voice for Open Music. Now, what's next? One Voice would like to be a process, a kind of a living process with the objectives of being perennial. How? Now, with proposals which would be developed here with the objective of being part of the dialogue with the European institutions, with the Commission, Member States, but also the European Parliament. And again, I would like to thank the Groupe d'Amitié des Créateurs, Cultural Creator Friendship Group, and for their support also. So we hope that it will last for a long time. Now, regarding new opportunities, I mean, there's a full many possibilities to be developed. Talking about the instrumental and manufacturing, instrument manufacturing, also because no musician with musicians do not exist without any instruments. And One Voice for Open Music also live beyond this day, but also beyond the French Presidency of the European Union. As a matter of fact, our professional friends, European professional friends from the Czech Republic and also Sweden, are with us today, and they already committed themselves to carry on sharing ideas over the next months to come, and we would like to thank them very much. And that's the end. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention, and I really invite you to scan the code. And now I give the floor to Alexis, who's deputy at the European Parliament, but also member of the CCFG, Cultural Creators Friendship Group.
Hello, everybody. Dear colleagues, Ibán García del Blanco was here, one of our member in CCFG. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a pleasure to be here and exchange with you a common interest for European music. Let me first thank French Presidency and the National Center of Music for organizing this very interesting event. We, as Cultural Creators Friendship Group, are happy to officially support this important event, which comes at the right time. After 2 difficult years of pandemic, it is very important to meet each other physically and to remind ourselves that culture, and especially music, bring us together. despite the challenges we have to overcome today. Indeed, COVID-19 hit the cultural and creative sectors severely. The music sector lost 75% of its turnover, and additionally, this impact was distributed unevenly. Music, live music, music festivals, street musicians suffered the most. Now that the pandemic is slowly coming to an end, hopefully, we all hope for that, huge challenges for the sector remain, and obviously, new challenges will come. For that reason, I would like to point out the importance of this meeting today, which is bringing together the French Presidency, the European Parliament, the European Commission, national policymakers, the stakeholders of the sector, and to further discuss the development of an ambitious cultural policy which will support the goal for sustainable post-pandemic recovery. In that perspective, I strongly believe that all of us, we share one common vision: a thriving music sector that continues to play an essential role in the Europe cultural landscape. How can we obtain it? We have to bring together our diverse voices to determine a common vision and strategy for the future. The European Agenda for Music provides us with a framework, and we now have to strengthen it and implement it. On this particular point, let me share with you some thoughts and proposals that I believe could contribute to the discussion. It is very important to support diversity, the development and the promotion of all genres and types in music in Europe. Music has been and will always be a powerful expression of all of our different backgrounds and identities, which create our common European cultural identity. We should also support the cross-border circulation of European music repertoire within the European Union. The European repertoire fares quite well on a national level, but the number of European artists capable of transforming a local success into a cross-border success, it's quite limited. I believe this is a quite enough reason to support the mobility of artists in music. And let me also share with you the idea of the creation of European Music Observatory. It's not a new idea. It has been mentioned a long time ago, and I think it's time to work towards this direction in the same spirit as the Audiovisual Observatory is. It will be essential to better monitoring and supporting data collection and knowledge of the sector. So we will have better picture of how to create effective policies for music and for the whole music sector. Recently, the European Parliament, in its resolution on the situation of the artists and the cultural recovery in the European Union, called on the member states to develop a legal and institutional framework for creative artistic activity in order to guarantee access to social benefits. Furthermore, especially during the difficult times of the pandemic, together with the colleagues in the Cultural Creators French group, we have been voicing out our demands for Article 18, that calls for appropriate and proportionate remuneration of authors and performers, even though the deadline for the national transposition of the Copyright Directive was in June 2021. Many countries have not yet proceeded to the necessary activities. Last week, we tabled a relevant question in collaboration with IPO artists, and we hope we will see action soon on behalf of the Commission on this matter. Overall, we, as members of the European Parliament and members of the Cultural Creators Friendship Group, will keep highlighting the tremendous role played by culture and artists in every field of our life. I'm very pleased that we have today the occasion to share our voices with your voice. Therefore, we demand once again concrete and effective policy tools to protect and support the people working in culture and art itself. Thank you very much.
Juste petit message pour vous dire que la...
Just a quick, small message. I mean, we're having a coffee break, and I would like to thank also the region for hosting this event, and also Misha, and who are supporting us for their work. So thank you very much, and I invite you for a break, coffee break. We'll resume at 11:30. Thank you. See you later.
Shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Just wait a few seconds for everybody to take their seats. And here we are. Okay, everyone, welcome again here in Strasbourg at the headquarters of the region. I have to say on a personal note that it does feel as if we're actually at the European Parliament. The room is very much looking alike, which is actually a stone throw away from this building. It's very similar, minus obviously the tough security measures to get in the building. It was easier to get access to the region today. So thanks again to our partners today at the region Grand Est for hosting us. Thanks again to all the speakers who very brilliantly expressed their support for the One Voice for European Music process this morning. Thanks to the European Parliament, who's supporting this initiative through the Cultural Creators Friendship Group. And obviously, my heartfelt thanks to the Centre National de la Musique for putting this brilliant event together. And I have the pleasure today to host the panel discussion of the event. We'll get, obviously, into the nitty-gritty of the Music Moves Europe initiative. We've heard a lot about this initiative this morning already. We'll try and dig into a little bit more detail today with our speakers and basically decipher what it means for the sector, obviously, for sectorial organization, stakeholders, but also for the Commission, and the Commission is represented in our panel today. So after that, obviously, what I would like us to do is to look ahead, to look 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, where this process, One Voice for European Music, where Music Moves Europe is going to take us. And I think our panelists will have a lot to say about that, but no spoilers, obviously. So let's, I guess, get down to the gist of things. And first, maybe if you agree, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves very briefly. Maybe starting with you, Barbara. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. My name is Barbara Gessler. I'm the head of unit responsible in the Directorate General Education and Culture for the Creative Europe program. And together with my colleague Susanne Hollmann in the policy unit, we've been following up very closely, obviously, on the Music Moves Europe initiative since the beginning.
Well, thank you, Barbara. We're very happy to have you here. You were supposed to be here, but unfortunately, the circumstances, happened, and we're very, very grateful that you still make it with us in this discussion. We really appreciate you joining the discussion. Maybe Mathieu next?
Yeah. So I'm Mathieu Philibert with Impala. I'm Public Affairs Director at Impala. It's the European Association of Independent Music Companies. We represent close to 6,000 music SMEs and self-releasing artists across Europe. We took part in the working groups that led to the recommendations in the One Voice for European Music report, and we're delighted to be here.
So are we. Martel.
Hi everyone, I'm Martel Ollerenshaw. I am the Vice President of the Europe Jazz Network. We are a very long-standing network since 1987 of 175 members, promoters, producers, programmers and national organisations across 34 countries. And I myself am a creative producer, and I work to enable musicians to expand their careers.
Angela.
I'm Angela Dorgan. I'm here today in my capacity as Vice President of EME, which is the European Music Exporters Exchange. We are 29 members in 25 countries of music export offices. A lot of us which have in common with me. I'm at the Ireland office, and some of us work in export only, and a lot of us work as the music offices and the music information offices for the popular music sector around Europe. My own company, First Music Contact, Music from Ireland, our export activity, is part of a talent pipeline of support for the sector and musicians.
Thanks. Thank you all for this introduction. So, as you can see, we have a very diverse panel representing a great variety of outlooks and viewpoints from the music sector. And you have all, to a certain capacity, participated into the process, this discussion, One Voice for European Music. So it's actually your work that we're going to discuss in the context of Music Moves Europe. And obviously, Barbara will have plenty of time to comment on these recommendations that we're unveiling today. So we'll have something like 45 minutes on the floor here with our speakers, after which we will open the floor for a short time for Q&A. So you can already start thinking about what you want to ask and grill our speakers, not my responsibility. And obviously, after that, we'll have lunch all together out there in the main hall. Notice that this is going to be interpreted into French. So if you are not fully at ease with English, you can put your little devices on, which gives me the opportunity to thank the technicians and the producers of this event who have done an amazing job. So thank you very much to them. Let's jump into things, shall we? The first question I'll have is for you, Barbara. We talked a lot about Music Moves Europe this morning. You were there from the beginning. Can you explain to us what is the genesis of this initiative?
Yes, indeed. We've already heard quite some elements this morning about the official beginnings of the Music Moves Europe initiative. For example, the great days at the Ancienne Belgique. And I think it's fair to say that this was really a united effort of both the music industry and, as you rightly said, Fabien, several of you, or most of you, are the partisans also of this initiative and are here today in Strasbourg. A united effort of music industry and the Commission, which was at the time also ready to act on what was perceived as a justified need to fill a gap, meaning there was an agreement that there was a necessity to improve the circulation of works across borders in Europe, and there was a necessity to increase the discoverability, as we call it. I'm not even sure if this word even exists, but we labeled it, so now it exists, for all citizens to to be able to access Europe's diversity and also to be able to show Europe's diversity. And over the years, I think the gap that was also identified and acknowledged was that increasingly it was known that there's a very steep social and identity shaping role of culture and notably music. And I can say this was not given in the beginning, and you will remember that. And I think I can say it openly in no institution where there was a perception that in particular in certain parts of the music sector, they were faring fairly well without public support. In the beginning, there was also a lot of talking about funding and, of course, about copyright issues. And the other questions that we are talking about today, such as the necessity to work on the status of the artist or cross-border circulation, not only being a matter of financial support, but also of a reduction of bureaucratic burden or similar. All of this has kicked in over time. And I guess it's also fair to say that the question that has been very prominent over the past years, in particular due to COVID, of fair remuneration has really gained prominence over the past year. Part of the genesis is certainly, and some of you will remember that as well, that we've always been pleading a lot for one voice. And I think this is what is happening today, that this getting together and speaking with one voice makes a lot of sense. That you are here today also proves, both with the nuanced support by the European Parliament and also the recognition of the member states at various levels, that music is an ecosystem that justifies its own interventions at European level. And I think the most prominent evidence, speaking from my point of view, obviously, as head of unit Creative Europe, were also the eventually, I would say, successful discussions on the role of music in the new program. And I'm happy to go into this further, but I know that my director, Tamas, already mentioned some of the elements this morning.
Absolutely, Barbara. And it is a historic milestone that for the first time, music is recognized as a standalone sector in the legal basis of Creative Europe. And this, we know you were very involved in that struggle. And down the line, I think we have to thank the Commission for their tireless efforts pushing that. But we still have a road ahead. But I'd like, again, to rewind the tape a little bit to give the audience here a little bit of context. Because we're starting from far, right? And Mathieu, you were there also since the very beginning of these discussions. My question is more for you to tell us, like, do you feel that the sector, the music sector as a whole, is better heard today in 2022 by the European institutions in general than it was in 2015, when Barbara mentioned the first discussions, the first sectorial discussions in Brussels for the music sector? What's your take on this?
So the short answer is yes.
Give me the long one.
I think Music Moves Europe has helped put music on the EU policy map. But of course, the longer answer is much more nuanced than that. I thought about this question and how to structure my response, but I think from our perspective, so Impala, again, independent music companies, basically the main investors in new music and artists, so perspective of producers in the sector. The first point is whether are we heard, and also do we get the appropriate level of support within the EU programs, and this was touched upon by Monsieur Thiellay this morning very nicely. I think first point is there a dialogue with the music sector? And the clear answer, unfortunately, I have to say, is no. Currently, there's no dialogue. There was one before Music Moves Europe. That's what led to Music Moves Europe with the AB music groups. So I'm talking here about a structured dialogue between the sector and the EU, and more specifically with the European Commission. And we know there's a call coming, so a Music Moves Europe call, which is supposed to set up a new dialogue with the sector. But it's been announced, it hasn't opened yet, so we know that there's still a bit of time until this becomes a reality. So we're really looking forward to that. But that's the first point. I don't think we're heard in the sense that there's a
structured dialogue.
There's not a structured dialogue with the sector, and that's quite unfortunate. The second point is whether there's appropriate level of support. So have we built on what the Music Moves Europe process, so the preparatory action, which was really meant to pave the way for larger and more structured support for the music in the new programs, has this really translated into more support and a renewed focus on music as we were hoping for? And there it's a bit of a mixed bag. So mathematically, because Creative Europe has an increased budget, and quite substantial increase, thanks in part to the European Parliament, who really pushed to almost double the envelope. Mathematically, there's going to be more money for music. So that means more platforms, more networks, more projects, more cooperation projects funded that are music specific. Then you have the sectoral action approach. That's new. On top of the horizontal approach, they're going for sectoral actions. I heard this morning someone say that 10% of the cooperation projects was going to music. I'm happy to be corrected, but I think it's 10% of the envelope going to a series of sectors under the sectoral action. So music is included, but it's not limited to music. So we can't say that there's a specific focus for music, but of course it's a welcome step in the right direction. Certainly not at the level of what we were hoping for, because as someone also reminded this morning, the ambition initially was to have a music program, and we feel that should really remain the ambition, if not for this program, for the next. Then there's Horizon Europe with a few music calls, also very welcome. And yeah, so a bit of a mixed bag. We can come back to the details.
If I sum up your answer, Mathieu, we have made progress, undeniably, but we're not there yet to what you, Impala, would expect, right, in terms of support.
Yeah, if I may just one last point.
Sure.
This is more specifically from our perspective, but the lack of an industrial approach in the program. This is something we, not necessarily the whole sector, but we and several others in the sector have been calling for a long time. But if you look at labels or even those who create, produce, distribute music, there's no support scheme like those that exist under the media program. And that hasn't changed with the new Creative Europe program, because we sit in the culture sub-program, which is modeled differently.
We'll touch on that in the second part of the discussion. Thank you very much, Mathieu. Mathieu, you mentioned Creative Europe, and you mentioned the fact that, despite there's no sub-program for music or strand specifically for music, there is support for music, and there is support for music organizations. Martel, you work with the European Jazz Network, which is a network supported by Creative Europe. In this context, I'd like you to explain to us briefly, how it works and why it's important for an organization like EJN to be supported by the European Union's budget, in your view, in your perspective.
Oh, it's really important. It's really important. So what it does for us is it allows us to be inclusive and to increase participation and to have greater impact. So that's the three sort of big things it does for us. But how it does that is that we're a membership organisation, so we have subscription from the members. And then we have money from Creative Europe, and that money enables us, big and small, so we've got some really big players in our creative music sector who are part of our membership, and some very, very small players as well, to participate equally across all of our activities. And we have a small staff, and we have a working board, and everyone rolls their sleeves up and mucks in, and we keep the dialogue open all the time, and we keep activities going all the time with all of the members. So I'll just give you a few examples of the activities that we have, and we've been doing lots of this stuff for a very long time, and we're really happy that it's in complete alignment with the European Commission. So those things are where it's a very nice confluence of theory and practice. So we have a gender balance activity that's been going for a long time, bringing women through in terms of musicians through to get greater awareness and greater exposure and greater dissemination of their work, and also cultural operators too. So, and that can be across the promoters, the presenters, people who work for national organisations, people who work in the media, in journalism for creative music and stuff like that. So we have a range of activities around gender balance, gender equality. We also have a strand called social inclusion, called We Insist, and that's been going for a very long time as well. And we've got some really interesting projects that are ongoing around social inclusion. And we also give out an award every year for people who are doing really innovative and exceptional work in that area. The original winner, the inaugural winner was Bonnier Bleu in Saint-Denis in Paris. They do exceptional work, that festival, and they're leading the way with that. And that's been going for quite some time. So we've just had an activity around that. We also have something called the Artistic Exchange Platform, and that is people, all of the organisations coming together to work together. So you have to have, in order to participate, you need to have a project which is 3 or more members. And that's all about diversifying who works, bringing new artists into the fold and getting them out and about, so mobility. And it's all about innovation in the sector.
Well, that's quite a program.
plus the conference that we have, which I will get to. But we have an amazing conference that happens every year. We get over 500. Well, pre-pandemic, we used to get over 500 participants, not just from inside our network, from outside the network as well, all across the sector, because we're representative of the ecosystem. So they come and it moves around every year. And this year we're going to be in Sofia, in Bulgaria.
Well, that sounds fantastic, and you know it's great because we were talking this morning about diversity, about inclusion, about also the societal impact of music in everybody's lives. So yes, obviously, there are industrial aspects of what is necessary from the European institutions. And this we will touch upon again later. But also through the networks, through the support that already exists with Creative Europe, these are things you can do also at societal level, which is in my opinion, fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, Angela, you're next. We talked about the preparatory action, Music Moves Europe, which was funded by the European Parliament. Angela, you were involved in one of the studies that was funded by this preparatory action, a study called a European Music Export Strategy. You yourself are an exporter from Ireland. You belong to the group of people who put together that project. My question is not so much now about the content of the study, which is, by the way, accessible in the resource page of the website One Voice for European Music, so you can all go through it. It's a long document, but it's fascinating. But I'd like to know to what extent this project, funded by the EU, by Music Moves Europe, cemented those exporters in Europe, which didn't have an organization before the project, if I'm not wrong. So can you give us your experience in terms of how this initiative, Music Moves Europe, actually creates that unity and allows the sector, in this case the exporters, to work together?
Sure. And I suppose and I love the way you put the panel together, because we are resourced by Barbara, and I suppose we meet in the middle of where Matthew and Martel do their activities. So I suppose most export offices, by their design, support the industrial activity. So a lot of people just on a practical level would support labels to go to international events, to travel to international markets, to sell European music abroad. And also most of us fund individuals, artists, just starting off in their career, starting them at each part of development. So what the investment, essentially, even though it is a grant, we should consider what Music Moves Europe and the preparatory action, and the money that Commission gives our sector is an investment that they get a return on.
I like that concept. Yeah. It's an investment that
it
they get a return on.
It isn't just we're helping you out. It's an investment in Europe. It's an investment in the capacity for us all to think collectively. And I suppose what I'd love to do after this morning is bring it all down to, we all work for musicians. Everyone in this room works for a musician who creates out of nothing a piece of art. So you and all your members work for them, I work for them, we all work for them. So our idea behind MS and the actions that we got, the toolbox that we got funded subsequently, is how do I make it as equal for a musician in the Czech Republic to have a professional development, careers and opportunities as equal to a musician in the UK or in Ireland or in France. So that's what we set about doing as a network. We've done it in a number of ways. We've done it through mentoring programs. We've measured ourselves, and I would echo what everyone was saying this morning in terms of observatories. We do need, in order to make bigger cases, we need to measure ourselves and show ourselves, and it can't continue to be anecdotal. So we measure ourselves, and I think when we talk about what I've seen happen out of the toolbox is we talk in abstracts, but actually on a practical level, part of the MX project that we're delivering is a trade mission to Mexico. And there, we have a musician from, I think, the Balkans, and Virgo can correct me if I'm mistaken, who would never, ever, as an electronic artist, get to go to Mexico to meet buyers in Mexico had it not been for the MA project, because there isn't. Yeah,
and that can only be achieved with European support, right?
Exactly.
Ireland is not going to do it. France is not going to do it. Slovenia is not going to do it.
Exactly. Right? We can't do it individually. I suppose what the other benefits that came out of our activity and came out of our toolbox is we're teaching each other to be better. So we are trying to make equal what we all have available to artists and professionals and labels in our sector, so that it doesn't matter where you're born. And I think it's worth pointing out that for artists, the borders in Europe aren't just physical. They can be in diversity, they can be in gender, they can be in socio-economic backgrounds. And I think what we're able to do is equalize access to the music industry so that talent can rise to the top no matter where you're from in Europe. And I think what we found out through our projects, and certainly I was able to as the Export Office for Ireland, is as we started to measure ourselves and then share those measurements with our own governments, I was able to kind of shame our collection society into giving us more money, because they weren't giving the Export Office an investment. And then I was like, well, all the other countries are, and we're not. And suddenly they were giving us more investment for our programs. And I
benchmarking.
Think, and it echoed through our membership, I think, and it came through very strongly that our experiences that we shared and our experiences that we're developing through the toolbox are having real national impact. Yeah. So our first thing was to look at how we can use each other as export markets, and then the second part of our study in our toolbox is how we're developing, then bringing Europe as one entity to global
national markets or to global markets. I mean, this is a fantastic project, and congratulations again. I'll give back the floor to Barbara. I think you're raising your hand, and obviously it's interesting for the Commission now to have an answer. Let it be short, because we still have a lot of questions, but an answer to these points maybe, Barbara.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the floor again, Fabien, very briefly, because in particular I wanted to react also to what Mathieu has said, because I have the good news to tell you that the call on the dialogue, on strengthening the dialogue, has just been published today.
Oh, wow.
And the deadline will be mid-June. So I'm happy to be able to share this very good news with you. And I would also like to say that, of course, if I haven't mentioned it explicitly before, Music Moves Europe is more than funding and more than copyright. It's all of those studies and and workshops and events that all of you or many of you here around the table have been involved in. And as Angela rightly said, that are also contributing to fruitify, let's say, the dialogue between different levels and to kind of raise each other's profile, each music ecosystem at different levels by learning from each other. The European added value is there. And we, and in particular, all the people working in the Commission, on behalf of Music Moves Europe, are very grateful to all of you to making that happen. And we are at the same time, of course, also committed to shaping this initiative further and bringing it to the forefront of everybody's awareness. And I can assure you that we're doing this every day.
Well, that's fantastic news, Barbara. If you're launching this call for the structured dialogue, it really means that, you know, Mathieu's call for closer, tighter-knit dialogue with the institutions, especially with the Commission, will be met. But as you rightly said, it's also, you know, a dialogue process that is organic, right? That the sector also brings on the table, and today is definitely a proof of that. Speaking of organic, I'd like to touch upon the green transition. Martel, your network, the European Jazz Network, is working on this particular subject, the green transition in the music sector. And we heard this morning through the recommendations of the One Voice for European Music process. Once again, I encourage you to check the global documents and the summary of the recommendations. So this aspect is really one of the key demands, one of the key asks by the music sector in terms of support. We can't do it ourselves. We need support. We need some form of framing of how the European institutions are pushing us to do better, right? So very briefly, can you tell us what you are already doing that could maybe be an inspiration for other organizations in the room? Briefly.
We have a green manifesto, in fact, and we are hoping to be an inspiration for other genres, other people in the sector, just as we have been for our own network. So we've been working on a green manifesto. We've had a green manifesto signed off by the members in 2015. It started with was a push. You know, everyone was interested because mobility doesn't necessarily equal green, exactly. But mobility is important in our sector. So we started with Take the Green Train, a tour, a platform for touring, which was an eco tour by train. And we had advice from Julie's Bicycle, and we formulated a green rider, and from that we came up with a green manifesto. And now we have, just this week, we've been working towards this not only with venues and what they can do, including bikes and repair kits inside the or next to the venue, and way that you use water, way that you use paper, all of this sort of stuff, and how audiences travel. All sorts of things that are part of this Green Rider and our Green Manifesto. But this week, we're moving ahead with Green Pilot Tours, which are part of our new Creative Europe initiative. And these are aimed at stimulating mobility while adhering to a set of green principles. So we're doing the macro and the micro, the principle, the theory and the practice. That's amazing. I surely hope that some of the organizations present in the room today will get inspired by those projects and maybe, you know, follow the lead, right? I hope so too. And hopefully, you know, in the next generation of tools, you know, through Music Moves Europe, this element will be highlighted because obviously it's an emergency. Mathieu, I wanted to ask you, because we heard this word a few times today, right? Observatory, data collection, data analysis, the need for the sector to know itself before it can ask any public support to, you know, accurately, targetedly help it. So this has been one of the battles, right, over the last few years to work on this, to work on a feasibility study that was funded by Music Moves Europe on a European Music Observatory. Again, you're quite involved in this subject. Tell us briefly, like, what difference will it make for the music sector to have a body like this?
also from the independent music companies' perspective, because I mean this is key, especially for small and medium players. And you know, what do you think we should do to trigger and to push this project further?
Yeah, so as you said, there was a study made on this very specific question, and the conclusions were very clear that the data was fragmented, that there was a lack of harmonization of data collection practices, and it comes up with different scenarios for setting up what could be a small or bigger institution, so an observatory. And we feel it's really it's the logical first step for building everything. You need to measure and you need to be able to map, to see the contribution of the sector, to measure diversity, and to be able to then have tailor-made policies and programs. It seems completely logical, and Impala is completely behind it. We're in Strasbourg, where there is actually the European Audiovisual Observatory. Hopefully that's a good omen for the Music Observatory, but it just feels like the natural step of this process. And generally, I think it also brings us back to the studies that were made in the framework of Music Moves Europe. I mean, money was used to fund those studies. The sector was behind them. Let's make sure that we build on them and that we can go to the next step.
See some tangible results behind those studies, right?
And it ties back to what we were saying earlier about the preparatory action being there to pave the way. I mean, let's not forget about these studies. Let's really use them to do something about them. So observatory for sure, completely support that.
I'm sure your colleagues around this panel would agree on the need for data centralized at European level, indicators, European indicators. That's really an ask that the sector has been pushing for a long time. Another ask that the sector has been pushing is actually the fruit of another study that was funded through Music Moves Europe, which is the European Export Strategy study. Obviously, we saw in the recommendations description this morning that it's quite, you know, a subject of priority for the sector. Those subjects, Angela, you work with those subjects every day: mobility of artists, circulation of repertoires, festivals, venues, how to help the grassroots venues to host more European artists. From the field, from where you operate, what do you need to do better?
Well, it looks like Barbara's granting wishes today. So Matthew asked for the industrial action. Barbara, I have a list for when we're done. We need what's coming out of the report. And I think it's true what everybody's saying and what was said this morning. We know what we need as a sector. The ultimate wish would be because we marry industry with art and industry with culture as a sector, I think we are uniquely positioned, and this is why I think the one voice for European music is so important, is that we need the data collected about all of us and the activity that we do to strengthen each other, like the toolbox. So further investment in the toolbox and to realise that toolbox. We've been doing this study and implementing pilots for 3 to 4 years now. I forget to count COVID, but we need more investment to that to widen the toolbox. There are still elements of the toolbox that were recommended in our initial report that haven't been financed yet. So all of that obviously is on the wish list. But I guess where we ultimately need to be is that investment for our sector needs to be, I think personally, we need to be emulating what the audiovisual sector have. We are an industry and we marry industry with culture, and I think the solutions, I'm absolutely confident, having, being on the board of MA and looking at the outcomes coming out from our studies and the activities in our member countries, the solutions are there. The solutions are in the sector. Right. We just need the ambition of the European Commission to meet those solutions and to help us collectively bring those solutions.
I like that thinking because, sometimes in the music sector, we have the feeling that it's going to be impossible, right? So we sort of stop ourselves from thinking big. I want to take an example of something that happened yesterday in Ireland, actually, I think it marries well with this example. Well, you'll describe it, Angela, but something big happened in Ireland yesterday. Yes. For the music sector, for the cultural sector in general, which we thought, the cultural sector, impossible 2-3 years ago. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I can, because I was very heavily involved in it. In my spare time, of which there is none, I am a voluntary chair of the National Campaign for the Arts in Ireland, and we have been lobbying for nearly 5 years now for a universal basic income for artists, based on the French support for individual artists for when they're not working, but as a universal investment. How committed I am to the Music Moves Europe project is shown by me being here, because I missed yesterday the launch of that coming to life, where a pilot was launched for the next 3 years, where 2,000 artists right across the sector will get €325 a week, non-means tested, automatic, into their bank accounts for the next 3 years. Universal income. So it's a personal kind of hill that I was prepared to die on. Thankfully, I didn't have to die on the hill, and we're now looking over the horizon of that hill to, now our job is to encourage everybody, and it's for artists and arts workers. So now we're looking for everybody to apply to it so that we may demonstrate to government the number of people who will need it post-pilot. So now we start at the end of the next hill, which is making it available for all artists post-pilot, but certainly a breakthrough of enormous impact for us as a society and a republic, but also as an example to our European neighbours.
So it is possible to think big, be ambitious, and actually deliver some results that were unexpected 2-3 years before. I think this, I mean, if I think in the context of the AB Music Working Group in 2015, the Music Moves Europe preparatory action that Mathieu, you spurred back in 2016, 2017, and where we are now with, again, you know, a small step, but a step indeed, because Music Moves Europe is sanctuarized in the legal basis of Creative Europe. I think we can continue thinking big, and I think an event like today's event is one step, you know, in the path to achieving that. And now I'm going to maybe ask you, Barbara, to summarize this, because obviously we've heard the sector that is very eager for more and more targeted, more tailor-made support for the music sector. Obviously with 2028 in mind, right? 2028 being the start of the next generation of EU funding, the next 7-year program, and the next Creative Europe program. I'm not going to ask you if you think it's possible for the music sector to have a sectorial support strand or support program, but I'm going to ask you maybe to tell us, do you think we can achieve more in the next 5-6 years and maybe hopefully get there?
You hear me sighing because we've been in panels together, most of you around in this panel, where we both said it will be possible or it won't be possible. But I think, as you said, we achieved already quite a bit. I would like to say that from the experience now, for example, the negotiation on the Creative Europe program, if we talk about a new program, thinking and planning backwards, we tabled the first proposal for the new program in 2018, after already having worked intensely on its preparation. So just as a little timeline here, the work on the new program will have to start in 2024 at the latest. We will also have a midterm evaluation to work with around this time, probably a little bit later, and also a concise final evaluation of the 2013-2020 program. So as all of you around the table have said, figures will be key also to show how our support has worked, if it has had an impact and meaning. And this is something from my experience now negotiating with the MEPs and also with the member states, that has proven very, very meaningful if one can deliver data on why it is important to support. We've done it in the past, I know that, thanks to Music Moves Europe and all the studies that were done. But I think now we have some more concrete elements on the table, and they will ask us to be very concrete. On the other hand, I would like to say that we also see, and I don't want to pour too much water into the wine, but we also see that there are a lot of very specific emergency and urgency situations that are facing Europe at the moment. I mean, Tamas mentioned it very clearly this morning. There's a war going on. We're coming out of a pandemic, the impact of which is not yet over, in particular for your industry. So I think what needs to be done is to really focus on the common needs and the common stipulations. And I think today, of course, as said, is a very important milestone towards this. I think we have an easier basis now also because we have specifically in this Creative Europe program an alignment of policy with funding. And this is something that we didn't have so specifically before. So in the Commission, but also in the other institutions, we're working on this alignment between what we want to achieve politically and what we want to achieve with our funding. And I think this goes hand in hand also with what is now published in the call on the sectorial dialogue, is that if we have a definition, for example, what is a music ecosystem and similar, it will be much easier to build on this and to establish an argumentaire for the future program. I think also what's probably easier and less disputed than it was at the time when we were talking 5-7 years ago, that the role of culture and the role of music, notably for the individual, for society, for European integration, is in the light of these challenges that we are currently facing, is much less disputed. Nobody's really asking themselves today, is it really true that music can play a role for individual well-being or for health, for example? We're not talking instrumentalization here, but we're talking about facts. And this is something that I'm personally convinced will help the discussion in these very challenging times. And just a little step back in history, the media program was funded in 1990. It had its birthday. The celebrations were a bit meager because of the pandemic in 1990, but it was built in the 80s, and the 80s were actually a different time. We will now have to face different priorities. We're facing at the same time a Europe that's challenged, but at the same time also you're offering a sector that can help Europe continue to be solid on its foundations. So it's both. It's going to be challenging, but at the same time, I also see opportunities that maybe weren't there 10 years ago.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I think we're going to keep with us your optimism and your capacity to inspire us to keep aligning ourselves as a music sector. I think this word corresponds very much to the philosophy of One Voice for European Music. It corresponds to the philosophy of what you've been doing for the last 6-7 years to push that agenda. And we know it's been difficult, but we also know that thanks to the alignment of the sector, things can be achieved and results can be achieved. Thank you so much, Barbara, for joining us today once again. I know it wasn't the easiest for you to be here, so it's very much appreciated. And thank you to our panelists as well for the brilliant exposés. I think now it's time to open the floor to a few questions from the audience. We still have, I think, something like 10 minutes on the agenda, if I'm not mistaken. So if you have anything to add, comment on, ask, now is the time. And if nobody denounces themselves, I will have to act swiftly and point a finger at someone. Anyone? Oh, I see. I'm so sorry. I see a lot of people behind me, actually. So who's first? I have two candidates, Elise and Burak. Ladies first or Burak first?
Does
Elise,
this work?
can you please introduce yourself very briefly?
Yes, does this work? Hi everyone. My name is Elise. I'm the General Coordinator of Live Europe, which is a platform that boosts the cross-border circulation of new European talents, and that was mentioned a few times before today. Well, first of all, I really want to thank CNM for organizing this event, and I really want to thank our brilliant panelists for this very interesting discussion today. I have a question, maybe more for Barbara, regarding the recommendations that got out of the final report of One Voice for European Music. I believe those recommendations were just released today, so you may not have had the time to look into them, but I would be really interested to hear what would be your feedback on some of them, especially the recommendation that was really one of the clear recommendations from these discussions to see a progressive increase of the sectorial action for music in the current program, and more generally all the recommendations that were done on mobility or others. Thank you.
Barbara.
Well, obviously, the request for more support is something that I cannot reassure you about today, but I think it links into what I said earlier, that there will have to be a constant effort on behalf of the industry, together with the European Parliament, the member states, and the Commission, obviously, and the Music Moves Europe team behind it, that we continue building on the increases that we have already made, the sectorial action. Mathieu, unfortunately, you were right in what you were saying. We have, in the sectorial support in Creative Europe, been flagging very specific necessities of the music sectors, and we're flagging envelopes there as well. But of course, this can be and must be increased. I think there's already a lot of recognition, as Tamas mentioned this morning, also about the role of music in other programs, and also our colleagues in the policy unit have been evaluating how the cultural ecosystems have been reflected in the recovery funds, etc. So I think this transversal recognition is increasingly there, and so it's a little bit difficult for me to say that we will go much beyond that afterwards. But I surely hope, and I think the whole Music Moves Europe team will work on that. We have also set up a new mobility tool for individual mobility and also for residences that will soon be launched. And there we will also be tackling this aspect that you mentioned of support to mobility. And my policy colleagues are constantly working with other services to make sure that the bureaucratic burdens that I mentioned earlier that you are facing when crossing borders will be reduced. But that, of course, is also a question of competencies at various levels. But together also with the French Presidency, you have heard it, things are going on there, and there's an awareness. This is already a very important step, and also a wish and a concrete effort to work on this. When it comes to data and knowledge, of course, we continue supporting projects that will help us gather data and also evidence to increase the knowledge, as the recommendation says. And whether or not there will be a European music observatory, I cannot at this stage say. We know the results of the study, and I'm sure that we will continue building on these results to develop and explore further what can be done that really is meaningful, no matter the name, I would say, in this context. And as we've heard also before, the cross-cutting issues of the European Commission when it comes to green or when it comes to sustainable development are very much at the forefront. We are looking at all our funding mechanisms. We're looking at projects. We're asking projects to be sustainable and green and reach gender equality and other sustainable elements. So yes, I think partly we can respond already to the recommendations, but recommendations are there to be developed further and to be built on. And I can only promise you here that we'll take them into consideration very carefully and hope to be shaping even more meaningful tools.
Thank you, Barbara. We had a question from Burak. There's another question from Audrey after that. But try to be concise because we're running out of time. But, you know, ask your question.
Thank you. Thanks very much to CNM and also for the One Voice for Music initiative, which has been a kind of example of how music information center at national level would work, and then how actually a European observatory can be also built at some point. And this is actually a good example to show when there is a financial support and a political will to achieve a result, is actually really brings output that is useful to everyone. And we are seeing now the Music Moves Europe, and at the same time some calls from Horizon Europe with the aims of supporting European music observatories. So what political steps is front of us to really take this political will at the EU level to achieve a European music observatory?
Your question is to Barbara or to the panel in general?
Starting from Barbara maybe, but if there's anyone else would like to comment.
So, more specifically about how do we build a coalition with the member states, with the parliament, beyond the support of the Commission? Barbara?
How am I not surprised that these questions come to me? Yes, you probably all know, and we're in Strasbourg, we're at the seat of the European Audiovisual Observatory, and many of you around this room will know how the European Audiovisual Observatory is being financed. It's an intergovernmental organization, and it's funded by national governments and funded also because they are willing to do that. I haven't said it before, but I would like to state it very clearly now. Dialogue is important with the European institutions, and it's also very important at other levels, at local, regional, and national levels. This needs to be complementary. A dialogue needs to be taking place in various fora and at various governance levels in order to be able to achieve a conviction. And I think you're a good way ahead with this if you're talking already with the future Czech presidency and the future Swedish presidency, that this is something that can actually be envisaged. I think you're taking the right steps. And the Commission will, of course, constructively support and accompany this process as it has done before. But it's not the Commission that sets up the observatory itself. So while I think we all agree in this room, and I've said it before, and my Music Moves Europe colleagues also have said it, we would, of course, like to see an observatory like this. It's not up to the Commission to set it up. So let's continue working in this direction together. I'm afraid I cannot give a totally satisfying answer now, but you're not surprised about that.
That's plenty already, Barbara. Thank you so much. And I hope Burak can answer some of your interrogations. we have time for one last question because Audrey raised her hands very, very quickly. And whoever answers this question in like 3 bullet points.
Yeah, I will keep it short. Thank you. This is Audrey from Live DMA. I'm not sure, Barbara, you can see me, but it's nice to see you. I've got 2 questions in one, but I swear I will make it short.
Short.
The first one is I would like to get your opinion on the strategic framework of the next Music Moves Europe calls. We've seen that there's a kind of trend for cascading grants, which I think is a great opportunities for some of the call, but there might be also some difficulties in terms of implementations for others. So I'd like to get your opinion on that. And the second point is on the dialogue call. So the call has just been released, so I didn't have time to read it. But I would like to know what's the guarantee for the European Commission to sit at the table of this dialogue if the dialogue is dedicated to the music sector, and how the Commission will take part in this dialogue in the future. Thank you.
You promised me a short question already. Okay, Barbara, in 1 minute, can you do it? Maybe 2?
Cascading grants are a great tool to give smaller grants, and they can be, as a tendency, less bureaucratic and less burdensome. This is why we often go now for cascading grants. And Audrey, you said it, and I saw you, by the way. It was nice. It's a tendency because we believe it can be close to the sector, and it can be done by professionals for professionals. So this is why we are in favor of cascading grants. Now, if you tell us that this is not a way to go forward, please let us know, because I was always under the impression that this was a meaningful tool, and I'd be happy to have a dialogue, a dialogue about that. The call. Listen, this is a call for tender, so the Commission will remain the master of this dialogue. So it is at the table because we kind of give it out as a service contract, and one of the elements will, of course, be that whatever is organized is organized in coordination and under the control of the European Commission. So there's absolutely no fear to be had that we are pulling out of the dialogue. On the contrary, I think we'll be closely involved, but maybe not organize everything ourselves, but leave it rather more to the sector to do it. And I think this will be a win-win. Yes, the call was just published now. You will see it. When you get home. But I'm sure it will. Your doubts and your concerns will be flattened when you see the tender specifications.
We're very much looking forward to that, and I think we're out of time. But this was very rich, and this was very detailed, and we're taking a lot home, including this exclusive announcement for the new structured dialogue and so many other things. So without taking too much time, I wanted to ask you to get a round of applause for our panelists, who are exceptional today. And they're at your disposal around lunch after, so yeah, if you have more specific questions, they're here. And now I'm going to give back the floor to Romain and Laleix for the conclusions of this morning.
Merci Fabien, et je crois qu'on peut applaudir aussi très fort Fabien.
Thank you, Fabien. I think we can give some applause to Fabien for the moderation of the panel. So, in conclusion of this morning, so I won't be too long. Simply, I just wanted to say thanks to all of our partners. Without them, this work could not have taken place, nor the organization of today. The region Grand Est and the President Rosner Bloch. I would like to thank them for their presence, for the organization of this morning. I would like to thank also the European Parliament and the members of Parliament, the members of the Friendship Group for the Creation Culture, the MPs Ibán García del Blanco and MP Georgoulis, who confirmed the support of the Parliament. I'd like to thank the European Commission, especially Barbara Gressler, who participated to this question and answer round. The Commission, especially Barbara and her team, since the beginning or during the preparation of today, have proven their capacity to dialogue. Barbara, you have given two elements today, and you have liberated the working horizon. And we are very proud that it has been done today. There is this tender for the musical sector, and then the Horizon 2024, a clear, concise working program, which hopefully will increase the support of music sector. Thanks to all people who contributed in a professional way to this day. You have been very numerous to take part in our working groups. And for us, the big success of today and of this initiative is to have gathered around this project the professionals of the music branch. And we have a common cause, a vision, clear vision, which we transmitted to the European Commission. I would like to reassure that this unified voice for music will not stop at the end of today, but will continue under French presidency. We'll have the pleasure in a couple of moments to welcome our Swedish and Czech colleagues who, in the framework of the presidency of their land, the presidency of the Commission, will take up the panel.
Aux professionnels de leur pays, aux organisations européennes de la musique pour poursuivre ce travail fondamental. Donc je vous demande de bien vouloir accueillir
I would like to welcome Eva Zakova, director of the Institute of Arts, Martin Nahai, general director of the agency, export agency Soundcheck, Ludwig Werner, of IFB in Sweden, in president of Music Sverige. I'll give them the floor for the first reflections and perspectives of the works to come.
Dear Eva, dear Martin, could you please present us briefly the main topics? What would be the main topics during your 6 months period?
Okay, thank you for that I can be here. Thank you for the invitation. I will speak first, and then I will take the floor to Martin, and I will not speak about music for a while. You know, but about some more general picture on the situation in the Czech Republic, about the state of culture policy there. So I represent the Arts and Theatre Institute, which is the organization established and financed by the Ministry of Culture in the Czech Republic. And the sound check office represented here by Marton who is the head of this office. And also, for example, Creative Europe Desk for Culture are the part and seated in this organization. So it's also my background, and we deal quite a lot also with the culture policy in the Czech Republic. So I would only briefly speak about the official plan of the Czech presidency in the field of culture and more about the context of it. And so the official priorities of the Ministry of Culture for the presidency, which have been just a few days announced by our ministry in Luxembourg, are to prepare the legislative document European Media Freedom Act, then a new regulatory framework for the audiovisual field, and a work plan for culture for the period 2023 till 26. And so I hope at least that, for example, that would be the opportunity to involve the results of this One Voice for Europe music initiative into this plan. And what I know more is that we will have two official conferences during the presidency and no big cultural events. And maybe I will explain the situation a little bit, because we are, as you know, as representatives of Czech cultural sector, we are not very happy with this plan or the official attitude toward the presidency. But the reason are that no big attention has been given to the preparation of the presidency because it was done during the previous government, because we had the election in October, and our previous prime minister has the conflict of interests because he's a businessman, and he had subsidies from the EU, you know, and so he wasn't a fan. He's not a fan of EU at all. So even though we were asked for giving the plans for some conferences or events toward the ministry, so nearly none of them were supported or, you know, to plan. And then we had the election, and the new government started to lead the country in the beginning of the year. We were in the budgetary provision, and they went to the election with the promise, you know, to in-depth more the state budget because of the COVID and so on. And so in the beginning of the year, all ministries were pushed to cut their expenses. So there's the situation. Fortunately, it's not so bad for the budget in the Ministry of Culture. It's less than previous year, but not so much. But according for the presidency, it's really, you know, no big events will be financed from this side. Nevertheless, I would, and what's next? I think that nowadays our government really faces not only the post-COVID situation, but we had in the beginning of year the real quite huge energy crisis. The prices increased a lot, and we had quite a great inflation. And at this moment, the government is really preoccupied by the war in Ukraine, because we have 300 refugees, and fortunately, the government really takes care of them. So, but I think that the expenses are enormous, and I'm afraid a little bit of the future situation. And so, nevertheless, this is the situation. The previous Minister of Culture succeeded in gaining a large sum of money for culture in the framework of the National Recovery Plan, which was also mentioned here. It's something as 300 million euros for culture, for supporting culture. And it deals with large range of topics as creative vouchers, creative education, creative centers, some investment, mapping of the CCIs, also some export activities. Hopefully, we will manage to implement it, and also the topic of the status of artists. And I would like to draw your attention to the differences on this topic, on this example of the status of artists. that there are really great differences between the level of cultural policy, the level of the state of cultural infrastructure, as well as the level of the communication between the ministry decision makers and the sector itself. You know, that there really is, in my opinion, and great differences. Because the status of artists, we already started to work on this topic before the crisis, but of course the crisis revealed this topic a lot because the government and ministry really, it was the effort to compensate losses not only to cultural organizations and enterprises, but also to individual artists. And it was really for the first time in the history of Czech cultural policy that the focus was, maintained or to this topic, to real these freelancers and the people who work independently in the culture and are not employees. And but what's really the crisis revealed that really in Czech Republic we do not have no definition of status, and because of it we really have the problem because we need to anchor their status in legislation or to be able to support them. We don't know how many artists we have. We do not know exact specification of artistic professions, and there is no regulation on the minimum level of fees, and we do not systematically monitor the employment and labor market opportunity of school graduates, for example. So after the year of effort, we succeeded as the sector because there were some discussions and meetings. So now the Czech Ministry of Culture has a plan in the framework of this National Recovery Plan for Culture that they will prepare a legislative definition of the status and that they will negotiate concrete measures in order to improve social and working conditions of artists. So, but on this example, you can see really, you can see that it can't be compared with the situation in France or in Sweden or in Ireland. You know, for us it's a dreamy situation, and so it will take a long time to get there. So I think we have in many cases very different starting points, and I think I can speak not only for the Czech Republic but maybe also the other Central and Eastern European countries. And I think that I have no specific recommendations how to solve this balance, you know, but because. But I'm afraid a little, really, and I know the situation from reality, that I'm afraid that to what extent the voice can be heard and to what extent it can be unified, even this one voice for Europe. And I think, but that the awareness, for example, about the initiative Music Moves Europe is the same. The awareness of these initiatives is very low, not only on the decision makers level, but also on the musical sector itself. And but what I know for sure, and I'm really very positive in this way, that we really need these initiatives. We really need the direction of the European Commission, European Parliament, because it helps us to bridge this gap and to develop culture sector in our countries, as we can spread and be inspired by good examples, and we really use it. And so it's very important for us also this cooperation projects and so on. So I think it's, and only maybe the other thing, and I think that it was the positive on the COVID situation, the sector's communication with the decision makers is slowly improving, and the roof organizations have emancipated during the COVID. And for example, in the field of music, for the first time, the broad platform of representatives of the music sectors was created. And but we are really in the beginning. And and for example, it was also important that it was a great campaign lobbying for this recovery plan, for this national recovery plan, and the whole culture community, profit as non-for-profit, all of them, even the whole cities and regions, really were part of this campaign, and it was quite huge. And I think it's also due to this campaign that it was this recovery plan also for the field of culture, that we have this money. But we hope that it will be implemented. There are a lot of problems. And it's my last words. I'm convinced that that this emancipation and awareness of the cultural sector and the grassroots movement is key to shifting culture policy and the level of the situation in our countries. And so now I will give the floor to Martin. He will speak about music. And I want to say, because he's the head of the Soundcheck music office, and I think it's in existence 5 years. And it really contributed greatly to the visibility and cooperation of the music sector in the Czech Republic. And I think it also contributes to the whole Central European area of music. Thank you.
Thank you. I will be very short. I think what Eva was saying is a crucial point. Not just for Czech Republic, but regionally. Status of artist is really a crucial point, and as of our input, what we are planning during September discussions, work group discussions actually, such as the similar that happened here. One is on the status of artists, and in which we will invite actually colleagues. There's a partly done document or partly created document by Eva and the team who's working on that, and why it was very important what she was saying is that this is on a culture policy level now, so it cannot be stopped. That's the very important point for us. The second, what we learned from COVID, was the dire situation on the grassroots club level. The clubs were taken as merely pubs, and there were no support, there's no awareness, they are not perceived as stakeholders of culture, but simply beer pubs and so on. And we saw the horrible situation where people just gave up their jobs. So what we are also doing is another work group discussions involving club commissions. Locally in Czech Republic, there's one network, is in Brno, and we're also inviting other professionals and to speak about policies, what legacies can we actually take over from friends, for instance, from Sweden or from Berlin, from many other countries, and how we can actually start putting this discussion on the table. The other thing, thank you for Corinne, thank you for CNM, because I think one voice for music is crucial. It is like a mosaic picture in which every country can kind of contribute to it and make it more clear. So that's, yeah.
Thank you very much, Eva and Martin, for these very instructive informations about the context of the Czech presidency. Thank you. Ludwig, from the Swedish perspective, any plan for music, one voice for European music during your presidency?
Well, thank you. First of all, thanks for being here. I think it's lovely, and thanks, Corinne, for actually sort of setting this dialogue in motion about creating not only what you're doing in France, but also for what's happening in Czech Republic, and even for what we're supposed to do in the spring of 23 when Sweden have the sort of chairing of the EU. And I'm also happy to say that we don't really know yet, because we're sort of waiting. It's a long time, a fairly long time until spring 23. But we have an organization in Sweden since 12 years back that's called Music Sweden, where we already collect all the rights holders. So it's authors, performers and producers in the same organization. And we've been working together now since the fall of 2010. And I think one of the things we realized working together and actually meeting regularly on issues relevant for the entire music industry is the important to have joint figures, sort of statistics, to have joint ideas on how to solve problems. I think actually we were very lucky to have each other when the Me Too happened in Sweden in 2017. And that also created a number of responses from the entire industry. And I think one of the ideas we have for next spring is to use the same kind of roundtable discussions that we had after the Me Too, and also what we've seen from France now during on the One Voice for European Music, but actually to try to get the business itself and also the importance of including authors, performers, and producers, everyone in the room, to actually explain and to have a very good discussion on how to improve on sort of the music scene. And I think the entire idea of actually having it, the good thing on the One Voice for European Music, one of the very good things is actually because I think we need to realize that the music sector will always be a sector that needs explaining for the politicians. And that goes on a national level and it goes on the international level. So I see this as a fantastic opportunity to take urgent issues for the music sector and have a sort of a format to present and initiate dialogue on a national and European level. So, and again, we don't have the details, but I know I'm going to meet you, the Czech Republic, in Stockholm at the Czech Republic Embassy in December.
Yes.
Yeah. So we already sort of started to see how we can sort of help each other in the process.
Thank you very much, Ludwig. Thank you for this excellent conclusion. And few words, juste pour remercier bien sûr tous les participants, vous remercier toutes et tous de votre présence aujourd'hui. Un mot pour les équipes du CNM, car nous allons passer le relais, bien sûr, à nos collègues tchèques, à nos collègues suédois, mais l'établissement va continuer de porter cette parole, à continuer de se mobiliser pour cette voie unifiée de la musique. Et je voulais qu'on applaudisse très fort à présent les équipes de l'établissement qui ont contribué à organiser toute cette journée et ces recommandations. Alessandra Andouar, Leslie de Gouville, et Corinne Sadki, que je vous demande d'applaudir chaleureusement, qui a été orchestrée toute cette journée.
Who has coordinated the whole day.
Et donc nous allons pouvoir passer au lunch.
So we can go to lunch and have
nos échanges.
a common moment also for exchange. Thank you.